In the next 6 examples, we have to solve for x, and in order to isolate a variable, we have to use opposite operations. For example, here, in order to remove -5, we have to add 5 to both sides of the equation. So we get the value of x is 20. In the next example here, in order to isolate x, we have to remove +4, and we will subtract 4 from both sides. So we get that the value of x is -1. In the next one, in order to solve for x, we have to remove ×2, and the opposite of ×2 is divide by 2. So we divide both sides by 2. Finally, the value of x gives 3. In the next example, in order to solve for x, we need to remove divide by 4, and the opposite of divided by 4 is multiply by 4. So we multiply by 4 both sides, so we get that the value of x is 20. In the next example, we have to remove the power of 3, and the opposite of an exponent is a root. In this case, it's the cubic root. So we take the cubic root from both sides of the equation. So we are left with x equals to 3. And at last, in order to isolate x, we have to remove a square root, and the opposite of a square root is an exponent of 2. So we will square both sides, so we get that the value of x is 25. In the next 2 examples, we have to solve for x, and here what we have to do first is remove -5 from the left side. So we will add 5 to both sides. So we get that 2x is 16, and at last we divide both sides by 2. So the value of x gives 8. Now, what if we start by dividing by 2? What if we want to remove 2 first instead of removing -5? So we divide both sides by 2, and then we split the numerator, so we get 2 fractions. Then we get rid of the 2's, so x minus 5 halves equals to 11 halves. The next step is to add 5 halves to both sides of the equation. So finally the value of x is 16 divided by 2, which is 8. Now this solution is okay, but you have to notice that it takes more steps. So anytime you are solving an equation, make sure that you start by removing either addition or subtraction. You always remove either addition or subtraction first, and then you remove either multiplication or division, because in that order it takes less steps to find the value of the variable. Now let's see the next example. We will start by subtracting 5 from both sides. So we get x over 2 is equal to 3, and at last we will multiply by 2. Finally, the value of x is 6. In the following two examples, we have to solve for x. So here, what we're gonna do first is add 1 to both sides. Now we have 8 equals to 2 times the square root of x. Now, what comes next? Next, we have to remove times 2. So we will divide both sides by 2, and we get 4 equals to the square root of x. And at last, in order to remove the square root, we will square both sides of the equation. So finally, the value of x gives 16. In the next example, there are different ways to solve this. The first one is, consider that x is the same as x divided by 1. So we have 3 times x divided by 2 gives 9. The next step is to remove the division. So I will multiply by 2 both sides of the equation. So we have 3x is 18, and at last we divide both sides by 3. So the value of x is 6. Another way to solve this exercise could be to multiply both sides by the inverse of 3 halves. I want to remove 3 halves, so I multiply by the inverse, which is 2 over 3. We will multiply both sides of the equation by 2 over 3, so we get rid of the fraction, and finally x is 18 divided by 3, and that gives 6. Now let's solve these two exercises. Let's start with the one on the left. We have to solve for b, so the first move will be to simplify the left side. So we get 3b plus 6 plus 2b gives 21. Then we will combine like terms on the left side. So we get 5b plus 6 is 21. After that, we will subtract 6 from both sides. So we get 5b equals to 15. And at last, we will divide both sides by 5. So finally, the answer is 3. In the next example, again we will start by simplifying the left side of the equation. So we have 7/3 of x plus 7/3 times 9 over 28 minus 3 gives 17. The next step is to simplify the multiplication here. So for example, this is divisible by 7 and this is divisible by 7 as well. Then this guy is divisible by 3 and this guy is divisible by 3. So we have 7/3 of x plus 3 over 4 minus 3 is 17. Then we will calculate the difference here. Don't forget that 3 is the same as 3 over 1. So we calculate the difference, and the difference is 9/4. So we have 7/3 of x minus 9 over 4 gives 17. And after that, we will add 9 over 4 to both sides, so we get 7/3 of x is 17 plus 9 over 4. Don't forget that 17 is the same as 17 plus 1, so we have to combine the two fractions, and we will get 7/3 of x equals to 77 divided by 4. And at last, we will multiply by the inverse of 7/3 in order to find the value of x. Now we can simplify here. This is divisible by 7, and this is divisible by 7 as well. So the value of x is 33 divided by 4. Choice A is the answer. Cross multiply is one basic strategy used to solve any linear equation. So anytime you are shown an equation with the form of a divided by b equals c divided by d, you cross multiply by writing a times d equals to b times c. For example here, in order to solve for x, the first move is to cross multiply, so you get 3x times 7 equals to 5 times x plus 1. Then you simplify each of the sides, 21x on the left, 5x plus 5 to the right side, and then you put together the x terms, so you subtract by 5x, and you get that 16x is 5, and at last x is 5 divided by 16. For the second example, you cross multiply first, so you get 3 times x plus 4 is 2 times x minus 1. Then you simplify each of the sides. 3x plus 12 is 2x minus 2. Then you put together the x terms, and you put together the numbers on the other side. So you get x is equal to negative 14.